As I am a Hiroshima atomic bomb descendant, I am honored to be one of your speakers marking the 79th anniversary of the August 6, 1945 Hiroshima City atomic bombing. 2 months ago, it was arranged for me to meet Hiroshima, Japan officials at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, the National Hall for Atomic Bomb Victims, Mayors for Peace, and have a face-to-face meeting with Hiroshima City Mayor Kazumi Matsui. Not only was I accepted graciously with open arms, but these respective organizations humbly received the first 500 donated copies of my father's diary book publication. For the past month on, they have shared my father's tiny message for peace with the people of Hiroshima City and visitors from around the world. Last month, my father's foundation, the Larry Miwa Peace Foundation, and I was greeted by the executive and deputy directors of ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons in Geneva, Switzerland. They are the recipient of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize for their incredible and ongoing progress with the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. My other stop included an unforgettable meeting with the executive director of the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, Netherlands. My wife and I were allowed to join the almost always sold-out tour of the Anne Frank House Museum, an experience of hope and resiliency. These two outstanding peace organizations were the first to preview and provide commentary for my father's diary publication nearly 2 years ago. If you're interested in learning more about my meetings in Hiroshima and in Europe, feel free to reach out to me via email and I'll be happy to oblige. You can pick up a flyer including other interesting information about my father and his diary, and you can note my contact information. It's right there at the diary courtesy. My father, Larry Miwa, stood here exactly 5 years ago to deliver his keynote speech from his perspective of a young boy and what he and his family had experienced with the atomic bombing. It would have been ideal if my father was here to speak to this audience again, but unfortunately he passed away a year and a half ago, so instead I am here to fulfill his final wishes and share his story. It's a story of a 14-year-old boy and his diary that he rediscovered 15 years ago, or 63 years after his last written diary entry. My father hopes his diary book publication can somehow make a tiny difference for peace. My father returned to his dear hometown of Hiroshima on August 15, 1945, the week after that unforgettable morning of August 6. All alone, he endured a mindless 2-day trek of the annihilated city of Hiroshima. He arrived at Hiroshima Station and eventually made his way to the next station in his hometown of Yokogawa. He walked through the burnt ruins for countless hours, making his way past the skeleton A-bomb dome and eventually locating his demolished junior high school. A single burnt tomato barely attached to its vine from his school's scorched garden had awaited him. He knelt down and stared at the lonely charred tomato, wondering if he should eat it because he was starving. Not a sign of life remained in the dead city except for one maggot-filled body that must have recently made its way out of the rubble, but not yet collected and cremated. All my father could do was pray for their soul. Making his way back to the station at exactly 12 o'clock noon, he heard a meek but formal voice being broadcasted over the empty train station's loudspeaker. The messenger explained that Japan would endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable. At that moment, 3 things he simultaneously concluded: that everyone, including his family, were dead. For the first time in its 3,000-year history, Japan lost a war. And lastly, it was the end of the world. None of you especially children, should never experience such overwhelming tragedies. Unfortunately, in today's fragile environment of grappling world affairs, the regional conflicts in Europe and the Middle East could at any moment engulf all of us into a global warfare. Unbelievably, leaders of the nuclear-carrying 9 countries, in which the 2 largest adversaries, US and Russia, threaten the rest of the world with their respective nuclear weapon arsenals. Their irresponsible rhetoric and recent nuclear weapon ground maneuvers creates an atmosphere of unprecedented instability. The implementation of even one tactical nuclear weapon could set off irreversible nuclear Armageddon. With hundreds of thousands and millions of years of natural global climate change, incredibly, the planet has the ability to heal itself. That's the beauty of Mother Nature, being the source and guiding force of creation, reclamation, and care of our one and only home for humanity. On the other hand, man-made disasters, human intervention, and the creation and buildup of thousands of city-destroying and world-ending nuclear weapons threatens mankind's very existence as we know it. Even if the nuclear 9 countries were able to restrain themselves from annihilating one another, it may simply be too late in just a matter of time before the unimaginable occurs. Just a single detonation, be it intentional or accidental, what the US for decades numerously calls broken arrows, a terrorist attack, a weaponized detonation, or forced meltdown of a nuclear facility, could ignite worldwide devastation. Additionally, what I'm concerned about is the exponential threat of artificial intelligence becoming aware of itself as a living entity. AI could take matters in its own hands by launching a calculated nuclear weapons attack to preserve itself. The fact the world has thousands of nuclear weapons at the ready makes this scenario a reality to the point of no return. It simply cannot be reversed. Maybe this ongoing threat can somehow be contained and eventually eliminated, but not likely. Is there anything we can do collectively or individually to make a difference to curb or eliminate this existential threat of self-annihilation? For my father and I, we worked the past 5 years to produce this book. It's named Ganbare, Hiroshima, Don't Give Up. It's a dual language book that encompasses his diary he wrote the 2 months surrounding the Hiroshima atomic bombing. My father's writings are not a protest of any sort or some kind of rah-rah message. It's simply common sense and encourages the courtesy that we should not nuke each other. Today's nuclear weapons are tens, hundreds, and even thousands of times more powerful than the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These absolute weapons of mass destruction are indiscriminate and designed to wipe out all forms of life and gathering places. Even just insidious is the weapon's ability to continue to kill those who are fortunate or unlucky to survive. Unprecedented injuries and radiation poisoning will continue to eliminate millions and possibly billions of innocent lives in the coming minutes, hours, days, months, decades, and so on, in a never-ending horrific aftermath. This will be no different than what the hundreds of thousands of hibakusha or survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki tragedies experienced, but just on an unbelievable scale. So I look to you in the audience to make a difference, either collectively or individually. Is there no one here within ear's reach, especially the young people, who will be the future preservationists of our planet, to become the next Greta Thunberg, nuclear weapons activist, to eliminate or at least completely lock down these weapons of mass destruction from ever being utilized? The world has so many more important issues to contend with, without this menace hanging over our heads of being nuked, contaminated, or having the constant threat of the world coming to the end at any moment. Let's not depend on incompetent and fear-mongering world leaders in this regard. The rest of us 8 billion human inhabitants simply want to live our lives the best we can. I am confident in all of us to work together with city and country partnerships around the world to collaborate and solve the real issues and problems that plague us all today and in the future. Ironically, my concerns with AI can also be our aid in solving these world issues while simultaneously reducing and eventually eliminating the threat that nuclear weapons pose on all of us. At the very least, if we can collectively make a tiny difference for peace, our combined efforts may result in a greater chance for world peace without the fear of nuclear weapons. Mahalo for listening and participating in today's Remembrance for Peace, Preservation, and Resolutions. Thank you.